We continue looking at his legacy, and now we're joined by Ambassador to Egypt, Cairo. Of course, based in Cairo, stationed in Cairo, our Ambassador to Egypt, career a diplomat, and of course also a former student of the President at the United Nations Institute of Namibia, Ambassador Japhet Isaacks. A very good morning to you, and thank you for making time out to join us under the circumstances.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
Just to reflect on it, Ambassador, before we get, of course, into his official work and that relationship, I just want to take a step back. What was the first encounter that you've had with Hage Geingob, the man?
Well, my first encounter with Comrade Hage Geingob, the man, was at the United Nations Institute for Namibia. We were busy as young students chatting in a group in Damaranama. And he came, and everybody says, hey, there comes the director. The director is here. And then he just told us, look, you are not going to forget your mother tongue. Learn English, which is international. So he was strict, but very straightforward. And in that way, we somehow came closer to him. There was a radio station called Radio RSA, which he used to come and listen with us students who were engaged in politics. And he would always come, give us critique, and then after that, just chat with the students. So that's how I first met him.
How did you end up at UNIN, Ambassador? Because I think for us to understand the history behind it, of course, we know that, yes, Namibian students were there. They were being taught to be prepared for a new government that you're going to lead for an independent Namibia. But for many of us, we're not quite sure how the selections happened and how you actually ended up being students there. How did you become a student at UNIN?
Well, we left Namibia through Botswana as members of Swabo Youth League, and ended up in Lusaka. Upon arrival, we were three. It was me, Chidi Chienuna, and late Angula. And we were met by Comrade Netumbo at the airport, picked up, and she took us to her house.
What was her role then?
She was the chief representative of SWAPO.
Okay.
In that region, covering Central and East Africa. So she took us to her house. We spent the night there, and the next day we were taken to the United Nations Institute for Namibia. And we were enrolled by Comrade Geingob and his staff.
In terms of the leadership there at UNIN during the time, talk to us a little bit about his leadership and what the thinking was in terms of the preparation for you to govern one day.
Basically, there were diverse intellectuals from various African countries, some also from outside Africa. So we had interactions with all those lecturers, professors, and people who came to visit the Institute and addressed us. But the biggest thing was, you don't speak your mother tongue before you master English, because that is the language of communication and the language of instructions. So that was how we kind of settled into the English language and became friends with him.
And I understand that during the time you were also being made aware that you will potentially be the ones that will sort of run the administration of an independent Namibia. Was that something that was being embedded while you were still in UNIN?
That's correct, sir. We were trained in various fields. There was politics, administration, law, and the other thing was the emphasis on the unity of the Namibian people. That's why he introduced a system where we were forced to learn cultural values of other ethnic groups. I remember at one stage we were taught a song in Oshirero, which was "Amembe geina ongombe, ye ongombe," and he would stand there and laugh. And then we go to Oshiwambo dances, and all kinds of diverse cultural values that he instilled in us. And we saw ourselves not as tribes, but as Namibians. That's what he strongly emphasized. At one stage, I actually went to spend, was it a month or so, at his house, where he was our father figure. We were treated equally with everybody else who were at home. And that was his core, that all are equal before the Lord. And that all of us have to focus on our final objective, that of liberating Namibia.
So that objective is provided to you. You are now coming out of UNIN. You're empowered, you're educated, and then there is also, of course, the doctrine to say, listen, this is a free Namibia, rule of law, etc., etc. We need to run this government. Now, with the advance of evidence, talk to us about when exactly do you join our foreign service and at which level? The moment you start working for government now, the foreign service.
Well, we are the ones. We were the first group of people who opened the Ministry of, or established the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we were recruited from the ranks of SWAPO. Most, if not all of us. Of course, when we established the base, the then administration of the South African regime also brought in people that they wanted us to bring into the system. And that, at the beginning, was difficult, but ultimately we have to realize that we are one people serving one nation. So that was how we established the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we had former SWAPO chief representatives, people like Comrade Galomo and all those people who came in and served as leaders of the institution.
What were some of the major issues that you had to deal with at the Foreign Service under his prime ministership, of course, at the advent of independence? I think one of them you already mentioned, that you also still had to deal with some of the South African cadres, and I'm pretty sure there was also a lot of tension starting off now within that new administration. Reflect a little bit on some of those issues.
Well, it was not easy initially, because the fundamental attitude that most of these people come in with was, we are in charge. So we had to knock down that. and tell them that we have different ranks and we will treat you in accordance with our policies.
According to the rank and not according to skin color or
No.
previously advantage, whatever.
No. So that was something that both our foreign minister, Comrade Theo Ben Guriab, may his soul rest in peace, and the late president emphasized on.
Our approach, of course, to foreign policy has always been non-aligned since independence. Of course, the president maintained that we are a child of international solidarity and we have acted accordingly since independence. Reflect a little bit on our policy outlook after independence, and I think also the thinking in context of the relationship of Dr. Theo Ben Guriab and during the time of the prime ministership of the late Hage Geingob.
Well, basically, there were fundamental policies that we had to implement. Look at the relations that we have cultivated as a freedom movement with various countries such as Cuba, Soviet Union, Germany, England, even the United States. So we have cultivated friends almost all over the world. And when we were sent out, we were somehow seasoned. And we had to follow the policies of our SWAPO party and the government.
In terms of this, of course, looking at some of those policies as well, what was the relationship, particularly if you look at the Arab world that you're representing in Arab Africa, of course you're stationed in Cairo, with his passing, what were some of the reactions that came from there, and what kind of relationship did the president have with the Arab world?
Well, we have many friends all over the Arab world because our freedom movement, SWAPO, was built basically in Cairo, nurtured there. And after Cairo, we moved to Dar es Salaam. But that relationship between SWAPO and the Egyptian government has always been very strong, as the Egyptians, particularly under former President Nasser, were very loyal to the liberation of Africa. And that is how our friendship as Namibia, the country, and the government have spread that friendship over the Arab world. I remember the last time that I received him in the United Arab Emirates. We had a meeting with the head of the United Arab Emirates, where we agreed that we will look into the possibility of establishing a diplomatic mission there, an embassy, full embassy. And I was negotiating this together with him as the president and with the head of the United Arab Emirates. So this is something that was very close to his heart, as well as the relations that he has built with some personal friends in the Arab world. Those were actually quite strong. So it is behind that we have continued to nurture and build that friendship.
In terms of his legacy in the international community, how do you think he will be remembered?
Well, Namibia is a child of international solidarity. And this is something that Comrade President Geingob has always emphasized on. International solidarity has been the milestone of our struggle. Thus, the liberation came about through that solidarity, freedom, and justice that we have always emphasized as SWAPO Party. So, as we went along and grew, we nurtured friends, and through that have basic relations that we build on that friendship.
Personally, from your side, how would you remember Dr. Hage Geingob, and perhaps how should we as Namibians honor him going forward?
I remember him as my mentor. Somebody strict, straight, and not hesitant to tell you his mind. He has always been a people's person, a man who loved music, songs, singing, meeting new friends, making new friends, and caring for the poor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for making time out to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Ambassador Japhet Isaacks, Ambassador to Egypt, of course, stationed in Cairo, talking to us about the relationship with the president and the legacy within the Arab world, and of course reflecting historically, as he was also one of his students at the United Nations Institute for Namibia in the 70s and 80s. That's of course in Lusaka, Zambia, during the liberation struggle.